Hi there, I'm Tyson from Dinosaur Dog Studio, and today I'm going to talk about the 3 most common mistakes when recording vocals. All right, so the first mistake when you're recording vocals is to use the wrong microphone. When we're talking about microphone choice, keep in mind that every single person that is going to be walking into your home recording studio and singing is going to have a different voice. Therefore, we shouldn't use the same microphone with every single singer. There are certain microphones that lend themselves to actually record every single voice well, but not every microphone is going to sound great with certain singers. So just because a microphone is more expensive doesn't mean it's going to sound better with a certain singer. So if you have multiple options to use and experiment with, do that. If not, try to pick a microphone that's going to sound the best with the most amount of singers. One microphone in particular that is terrible at this is the SM7B. By Shure. Don't get an SM7B if it's your only microphone. It can sound great in certain scenarios like broadcasting. However, when you're trying to record a singer, don't get an SM7B and just use that on every single singer, because it sounds terrible on 75% of singers and it sounds great with 25% of singers. So don't use an SM7B if it's your only microphone. Get just a good large diaphragm condenser, which is really what I recommend most people are recording vocals on. There's actually some really good ones out there for just $100 or $200. There are some great microphones that you can get on a budget that will work with almost every singer. That was point number 1. Point number 2 is don't stand too close to your microphone. You'll run into something known as the proximity effect. The proximity effect is where the closer I get to a microphone, the more bassy it sounds, which can sound good in solo, so it can actually trick you, especially as the singer, because they get that nice warm feeling when they're singing very close to the microphone. However, when you actually translate that into the mix, it's very difficult to mix in, and it just ends up sounding muddy, and it's hard to get in enough of the high mids, and it's just a disaster all around. So don't stand too close to the microphone. I recommend starting about 6 inches away from the microphone. Don't get any closer than about 5 inches, but you can back up all the way to about 12 inches away from the microphone. That's kind of the sweet spot with a large condenser microphone. So don't stand too close. The other issue you're going to run into if you stand too close is you're going to have a very dynamic performance from a vocalist. The closer you stand, the more dynamics are going to be in the take. The further away I stand, the less dynamics are going to be in the take. The reason this is important is that the vocal is already a super dynamic instrument, and when you're trying to mix that into, with all the other instruments, you're going to want a very consistent vocal in order for it to be at the right volume the entire time. If you have a super dynamic vocal take, it's going to be harder to mix that in because you're going to have to compress it a lot more to get a more consistent volume, and therefore you're going to be essentially destroying the actual performance more than if they just took a small step back and sang at a reasonable distance from the microphone. It's going to sound better, you're going to have less processing, which therefore is going to maintain more of the original performance, and it's going to definitely make your vocal sound better in the mix in the end. All right, and then the last one is you're recording too hot. So this is one of my biggest pet peeves with all modern producers. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to an artist and they've gone to a so-called professional producer and they've recorded them way too hot and they clipped out on their vocal performance. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the vocal is a very dynamic instrument. It's very easy. If I just sing one loud note, even if I'm backing away from the mic when I do it, it's going to clip out if I'm recording fairly hot in the DAW. So to avoid this, I recommend sitting down and getting an average of about minus 18 decibels coming into the DAW from the vocal. The reason this is because in the digital realm, we're not worried about a noise floor that much. Whereas in the olden days, where this kind of came from, you got to record super hot, is when we were recording to tape, because tape has a sound, and if we recorded quiet to a tape and then turned it up, it's gonna get a way more of that tape sound and kind of destroy the actual vocal performance. Nowadays, usually you have an extremely low noise floor within the digital realm, so therefore you don't need to record super hot. Minus 18 decibels is kind of the average that you're looking for. Don't make sure your vocal isn't peaking above minus 10 decibels. Oh yeah, and then the last thing is, if you have a loud section of the song and a quiet section of the song, feel free to adjust the gain as you're going in. So if the bridge is really high and the vocalist is really projecting out, just turn that gain down on the way in. Therefore, they're still at a minus 18 decibel level. The actual energy is still going to translate well, trust me. So don't be worried about, oh, this section should be louder. You can deal with all of that in the mix, and you don't have to worry about recording it hotter or quieter based on the actual performance. Try to get as even performance as you can on the way in. Minus 18 decibels, again, is the key kind of sweet spot for vocals, especially. Really all instruments, but vocals is the most important. Again, the 3 most common mistakes people make when recording vocals that ruins their take. First of all, choosing the wrong microphone. Second is standing too close to said microphone. And then third is recording way too hot. All right, so if you're doing these 3 things and you're now ready for mixing, I have a super helpful EQ guide that's going to guide you in mixing your vocals and also all the other most common instruments that you're going to run into as a mixer. And so I want to give you this guide for free. There's a link in the description to go grab that guide. If you're on Instagram, it's going to be a link in my bio, and you can go ahead and go pick that up. I hope this was super helpful for you. One last thing, leave me a comment in the description of what is your biggest struggle with your vocals. Are you not being able to get that crispy sound that you want, or do your vocals just sound muddy in the mix? Just let me know, what is your biggest struggle with vocal production? It can be anything under the sun. Leave that comment below. I'd very much appreciate it, and I'll respond to everybody who leaves a comment. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a great week. Thanks.